Olá, meus amor. Hello, dear ones. It's Maria with you again. Today is April 25th, 2021. And today we're going to do the second part of Dolores Cannon's book. Just to remind you that I have videos in Portuguese, Spanish, and English. And the description for the playlist for all my videos in English is in the description of this video. And why I decided, let's go back to our summary. We were created by God, like Himself. We are part of God's consciousness. When we incarnate on the body, only a little portion of that consciousness comes to the body, and the remain stays with God and has the knowledge of everything. And that other part we call our higher self. This part of our consciousness, we never lose connection with that. It's always trying to guide us to the best next step towards our purpose, the mission we came here to do. And that communication is made through our internal guidance systems. That's our emotions and feelings. And it speaks direct to you through our intuition. So what Dolores Cannon did in her work, she was able to take her clients, the subjects that she called, to a deep state of trance, and by doing that they were able to take their conscious mind, the ego mind, aside, and the higher self would come up, and the higher self would talk to Dolores and answer questions and tell things that the client needed to know in order to get back in alignment with their purpose. So let me start showing my screen. Oops, sorry, clicked the wrong thing. Here. All right. I start from the beginning, but I'll go very quick. That was the part 1 that we already talked about. Now we go to the part 2, and the part 2 I put it together all her books that's related to the extraterrestrial work, extraterrestrial knowledge. So as I explained previously, sometimes should the subject would regret to past lives on Earth, sometimes in between lives, other times their consciousness would go back straight to Source, go back to God, and many times they would regret to past life in other dimensions, other galaxies, other planets inside of the solar system. Well, not some in the solar system, but throughout the whole galaxy, and many times even in a spaceship. And what the clients started to do, they would think about missing time that had in this current life, and they would look for Dolores and give her a date. And when they were in deep trance, their consciousness would go back to that space in time, and the subconscious would reveal what really happened. Most of the cases, they had an encounter with extraterrestrials, but I'm going to explain more about later. Why I decided to talk to you about Dolores Cannon's book? That's 3 reasons. First reason is Dolores Cannon really expand her information, the information from her books really helped me expand my consciousness. And it helped me answer those 4 questions that I've been searching answers since 15, 17 years ago. That's what is God, who am I, where I came from, and what I'm doing here. So her books help me start tapping on the answer for these questions. I still in the search. I'm not completely satisfied with the answers I'm getting because I know I still have more. But I'm pretty happy already. After her books, after the knowledge of Abraham Hicks and Tina Louise Spalding book, and also her videos, that's really gave me a good understanding of those 4 questions. And another thing is, all my videos, I'm based in Dolores Cannon information. I'm being used to, in all information I'm doing, I'm passing to you guys on my videos. So all the information that I'm talking about, there is a little bit of Dolores Cannon information on there, as well as other sources too. But Dolores Cannon is really a big impact on my spiritual evolution. So that's why I'm doing that. I'm showing that to you guys. And if I tap in, if I say something that you want to learn more about, so you know what's a good place to look for. So let's go to the first book. So the Custodians. The Custodians was more like the case where people were missing time, or they have a very vivid dream about being in contact with extraterrestrials or seeing a spaceship, and then they would go and contact Dolores, and she would regret those people to those previous life, to that moment, and the subconsciousness would reveal what was really happening. And they would go to the spaceship, and then they'll meet the deities, and then some amazing things start to happen. She would start to ask questions to the subjects to be conscious, but actually it was the subconscious, but it's still connected to the life that the person was living at that moment. So it wasn't the higher self that would have the knowledge of everything. So sometimes Dolores would ask questions that the person, that consciousness wouldn't know, but because she was interact with deities, and then an idea just come up, and then actually, I think the first time deities started talking straight away to Dolores using the vehicle, that's the body, using the vehicle, the extraterrestrials start to talk straight away to Dolores and start to give her information about the origin of Earth, about all kinds of subjects that you can imagine. That's a really, she likes to say, if you like your mind to be bending like a pretzel, start reading those books. I can tell you that each one of her books would tap in at least one thought that I never heard about before. So for a person that likes to learn, you can imagine how happy I was with that. It was like a new discovery every book. This is an amazing book, and that's a good book to start with the extraterrestrial knowledge. And after that, she wrote The Convoluted Universe, that she split in 5 books. And that's more based on the extraterrestrial knowledge. The person would regret and she would really contact with, they would tell the story that they were living in other planets, and sometimes should, if it was in a spaceship, to talk straight with those other consciousness. And after each section, after the higher self, after the person would finish with describing a previous life or a situation, Dolores would call the higher self, and it will ask questions more related to the person's purpose, or sometimes related to any kind of illness that the person would have. And the amazing thing is they started to really describing about many things that you ever could imagine. For example, I think most of you already heard about Atlantis. So there was souls that regret to the time of Atlantis, and sometimes they would go to a spiritual, let's say, a non-physical realms, another dimension, where those informations were captured. But I don't want to go too much in detail. I don't want to get you too confused. I read those books in sequence, and my mind was spent gradually, because our mind is a really important device, and some information can be like a poison if you're not ready for it. So start getting the books and really follow your intuition. Your guides will tell you which books to read first. So, and then the second book, more information comes. It's really amazing, and they talk about the origin of Earth. I'm gonna create a video about what I understand about the origin of Earth, but not only from Dolores Cannon's information, but from other sources too, that I kind of link the dots and put things together in my mind. I will just show you guys what I understand so far about the origin of Earth. So they are really big books, but it's really worth too. And they have all those books, they already have audiobook. If you are a very busy person like I used to be, well, I'm still keep myself very busy. So if you don't really have time to read, you can use the Audible. They are all Audible. I think they have at least 10 audiobooks right now. As I told before, she wrote 19 books and has a participation in one, and 10 of her books already have audiobook, and I understand that they are still creating more. I think the idea is to make all of them available in audiobook. So the books 1 to 5, the subject was more like about that. There was some that regret the time of the pyramids, when the pyramids were created, when they were, how they were created. Sometimes the person was a worker there and had some knowledge, and that's really understanding. I don't want to spoil too much of the surprise of the books, but it tapping many subjects like mermaids. Mermaids really existed, especially on the time of Atlantis, and it's talk about reincarnation not only here but in many places. It's talk about parallel universe. When I heard that at the first time, I was, wow, what is that? The main idea is, let's say you have a big decision in your life. Let's say you are engaged with somebody, but then you are not really sure. So you are thinking, do I get married or I do not get married? So one part of your consciousness decided to get married and live that reality. And another part of your consciousness decided not to get married and had a completely different reality. It's like a fork in the road. But instead of you just take one, actually you take the two paths. And then you have parallel universe, parallel realities that you go along together, but usually they don't interact with each other. I know you don't need to believe me, that's some very complex things that I still need to learn more about. And wow, it's just lots of information. That's really worth to read those books. And then you have the Star Crash. This book, I don't know, I told I could not choose a top 5, but maybe that's one of my favorites because it tell the story of a beautiful soul that incarnated in a tribe in the place about where Canada is right now. And this tribe had long time ago a spaceship from the Pleiades crashed close to the place they were living, and they interacted together, and that story were kept from thousands of years, and they were telling the story but through legends, and they still have some objects. But the thing that most amazed me about that community was they would live in community. They were free. They were based by love, not judgment. Each one had their own abilities and worked their abilities, what they really like to do towards the whole community. So that's an amazing book. I really fall in love with that character. And then after he passed, and then he started looking at his life, and he has the knowledge of everything, and then Dolores asks more questions and give even more information. And the legacy from the stars, basically she put all the information that she gathered together about the same subject. It shouldn't come just for one person. It should come from many, many people. She read thousands of people. So, and the interesting thing, when the higher self would come up, or even the ETs, they would talk straight to Dolores. And sometimes they would just put aside the subject that they were dealing about for that for that person, and they would give additional information to complete a book, for example, another subject. It's like, okay, let's change the subject now. Okay, that's the information you are waiting for to complete that book. So that it is. It's really amazing, because when you are vibrating in the high dimensions up to the 5th dimension, you understand you are one with God. You are one with all there is, and we are all one. So more higher your dimension, more information you are able to know. So all of them, they, even without interact, it's just annoying. They know things. They don't need really to get together face to face to, oh, okay, we have a project, Dolores gonna. They just knew they supposed to do that. And then all of them from different subjects, different higher selves, but actually remember, the higher self is the part of you that is still with God. And when you are in oneness, when you are in God, you are all one. You know everything. So I know it's complicated if you are new to that, but if you read her books one by one, you're going to understand more and more. So they explain the origin of Earth. They also explain, they talk about the first, some of the souls that were incarnated now on Earth and have a session with Dolores. They participate on the creation of Earth. Some were a kind of a plasma just to clean the air. Others were responsible to create water. There was many types. And another was one of the first creatures to live on land. It's just amazing, a lot of information. For me, all that information sounds true to me. I resonate with that. Something that you hear, that you read, that might not resonate with you, that's okay. But I'm just passing along because I really resonate with everything that I read. And then you have the 3 waves of volunteers and the New Earth. In other videos, I already talked about the New Earth, that actually is the Golden Age. When I just talk a little bit about my video that's called Where We Are in the Universe. And I will make more videos about the Golden Age, that's the New Earth. But what it is, how this book came about. In 1945, everybody knows, on the Second World War, in 2 atomic bomb was dropped in Hiroshima and Nagasaki. And as I told you, there is another book that I did in part 1, A Soul Remember Hiroshima, that the person that was alive here right now, with an incarnation right now, she remembers that she had a deja vu about she being on Hiroshima at that time, and Dolores did the regression, and for sure she was. And then she tells the story. And there was a horrible time in the human history, but something really good born from that. When Earth was created, there is a primary directive. We come here, we incarnate here, only part of our consciousness incarnate here, and our purpose is to experience and remember that we are one with God. We come here, we experience, but and then we make our evolution back to love. And you're supposed to do that without direct intervention from the higher beings. Let's put it this way. They're not supposed to have direct interaction. But when Earth decided that she wanted to allow people to live on her and go through that transition to the higher dimensions with her, there was one rule. There was one rule that would put aside the prime directive. If the humans was about to destroy physically the planet, and then the higher dimensional beings was allowed to come and intervene. That's what was done in the time of Atlantis. And now we are reliving the same type of situation that happened in Atlantis. Atlantis were about to cross to start the golden ages, but I'm not going to talk about Atlantis right now. They didn't make it very good, but because the Second World War happened and they dropped the bombs, and if they keep doing, we would not be here right now. There would be no Earth. So they intervene, the higher conscience intervene with all the with the governments, and they did that. But that was not enough. They need to raise the vibration of the planet. But they still had to comply with the primary directive of no intervention. And then somebody had a great idea. Well, why we don't intervene from inside? We incarnate in a human body and then we do from inside as a human. Because and then there would not be intervention because you would be a human. So that's what they did. Earth sent the call. Earth needs help. We need volunteer to come and incarnate on Earth. And then the first wave of volunteer that comes from source, that comes from the angelic realms, that come from higher dimensions, that comes from many places in the universe, they incarnate on Earth. They choose parents, they incarnate on Earth with a higher vibration. But the problem is they would forget who they were and they would have a hard time. But even though they forgot, the first ones, they didn't have much to do. They just needed to be. Just their presence will increase the vibration of others. Now, you need to read the book, but that was the good part of the bombs. Because the bombs were dropped, they were able to intervene, and then many beings, many high vibrational beings, started to incarnate on Earth from many places in the galaxy, from the non-physical, and they are really doing a great job. And then they have the second wave, and then the third wave, and there is more. There are other books explain about the star seeds, and then you probably heard about indigo. The indigo children actually is not children anymore, and is in their 20s or more. And then you have the crystal children, the star kids, the hybrid kids, the rainbow kids, and now we have the divine kids. There is a book about that. I'm finished reading the book. Maybe I talk more about that later. So those amazing beings are coming and incarnating on Earth. But even if they come from the Pleiades, for example, when they incarnate, they are not an extraterrestrial. They are a human, because they was born as a human. So it's It's an amazing book. It's really opened my mind for many things. And then the Keepers of the Garden, I think that was the first book that she wrote on the subject. And there is the client is on, instead of go to a previous life on Earth and to a previous life in another planet. And then he described everything, and then she had many sessions with him, and there is a lot of discoveries there, and a lot of amazing information for us to understand our origin, and learn more about the universe, about ourselves, and how everything interacts. So actually that's it for today. I put it together, all the books that's related to the extraterrestrial knowledge. I hope that's really get you just a little bit curious to start to read her books. And it's just amazing knowledge. I think I read somewhere that the truth will set you free. Everything that we experience is based on our perception. But the perception of our reality is very distorted. There is a lot of distortion. We have been lied a lot. Our history is not as even close to the version that was passed to us. So it's very interesting to start really find out the truth. When I really learn that I'm one with God, that I connect straight to God, and the best thing that I can do is be happy. When I'm happy, I help not only myself, but I help the planet, I help everybody around me, just by being the true me, and be joyful to be me, doing the will of God for me. That's really empowering. So that's all for today. Thank you for listening to my presentation. I hope that's really help you to get you a little bit curious. Be gentle to yourself. Read one at a time. Take your time. Listen to your intuition. Because your intuition is your higher self tell you, read this book. You're ready for this book. Let me tell you a story. I heard about a book and I decided to read that book. And then the book didn't come. And I saw what happened to the book. And then I heard about another book. And then I bought that book and that book came first. And then I went back to Amazon and I checked why the other book didn't come. Because actually I accidentally got the Kindle version, not the physical version of the book that I intended to. And then I realized that didn't happen by accident. My higher self wants me to read the second book that arrived first. So that's what I did. And later on I understood why. That's really activated my consciousness to open a lot of doors that was closed. So just listen to your intuition. Things doesn't really happen by accident. It's just calling your attention. So much love and light to you, and see you tomorrow for the third and last part. Much love and light to you.